G'day you mob, Pete here, and this is another episode of Aussie English, the number one place for anyone and everyone wanting to learn Australian English. So today I have a Goss episode for you where I sit down with my old man, my father, Ian Smisson, and we talk about the week's news, whether locally down under here in Australia or non-locally overseas in other parts of the world. Okay, and we sometimes also talk about whatever comes to mind, right? If we can think of something interesting to share with you guys related to us or Australia, we also talk about that in the Goss. So these episodes are specifically designed to try and give you content about many different topics where we're obviously speaking in English and there are multiple people having a natural and spontaneous conversation in English. So it is particularly good to improve your listening skills. In order to complement that though, I really recommend that you join the podcast membership or the academy membership at aussieenglish.com.au, where you will get access to the full transcripts of these episodes, the PDFs, the downloads, and you can also use the online PDF reader to read and listen at the same time. Okay, so if you really want to improve your listening skills fast, get the transcript, listen and read at the same time, keep practicing, and that is the quickest way to level up your English. Anyway, I've been rabbiting on a bit. I've been talking a bit. Let's just get into this episode, guys. Smack the bird, and let's get into it. Alrighty, so true millipede. First true millipede, new species with more than 1,000 legs discovered in Western Australia.
Exactly.
This was an epic story. I saw this come up and was like, I did I think it was on an expression episode where I was talking about the difference between centipedes and millipedes and how there are no true millipedes with 1,000 legs or more, but now there are. So researchers named the subterranean animal.
It's a classic.
Yeah.
Eumillipes, which means true millipede.
Eumillipes, and then Persephone, which is the Greek goddess of the underworld. Persephone, is it?
Yeah, Persephone. Yeah.
See, there I don't even know the emphasis.
The emphasis on the right syllable. Yeah.
It's a crazy story where they found this millipede with 330 segments and 1,306 legs down, I think it was 60 metres underground in a mining area in the eastern goldfields of WA. So they found it in a cave, effectively, and it smashed the last record holder by like 556 legs. The previous record was set by Ilacme plenipes, which is found in Central California and has up to 750 legs. So, very cool. So, it turns out, apparently, they were doing a biodiversity survey.
Environmental impact statement for it.
Yeah, in these caves, obviously probably tied in with mining of one sort or another, and they ended up finding these cool species. I think some of the really cool stuff was that the reason that this species has so many legs is tied to why it's an underground animal and that it helps propel itself forward more. It gives it more grip, more purchase on the ground beneath it. So it's stronger and able to move around, I guess. And they were thinking it's a fungi eater. I think all millipedes are actually herbivores, or at least
there's
non-carnivores.
Not much else that's going to be 60 metres underground in a cave. There's not much
other insects,
other than
other arthropods and other arthropods
and fungi.
So anyway, it was a really cool story, but just love insects, love millipedes. Look at that, 1,000.
It's not an insect.
Yeah, well, you know what I mean.
Arthropod.
Arthropod. Well, do you want to explain that, Dad? Why isn't it an insect?
We need a
you got to do that. You can do that.
Insects,
people who don't know.
Insects are a taxon, as in a group of living things that have basically 3 body parts and 6 legs. That's the easiest way, and external skeletons.
Yep.
So it's the easiest way of talking about it. So things like flies, wasps, bees, ants, mosquitoes, beetles, butterflies.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because we kind of use bug as just this sort of catch-all phrase for anything that is an arthropod, right? Anything that is kind of like crawling, has many legs.
A bug, but in fact a bug is a particular order of a smaller taxon, a smaller group within insects. It's a particular group of insects are called bugs.
Well, don't we use it as well for some crustaceans?
Yeah,
that are sort of like
that's
crabs,
the common
right?
name.
Yeah, those the bugs. Yeah, they're not
Moreton Bay
tin.
bugs. Yeah.
So it was cool, and I was sort of looking into the thing. I guess I find really cool about these sorts of arthropods. I guess sort of like centipedes and millipedes is how much the number of segments their bodies have varies.
Yes.
It's interesting. Like, I would love to know more about the evolutionary explanation for why, say, insects don't just end up with many different thoraxes.
Yeah,
I guess you would
with 8 parts of their body rather than 3.
Yeah, exactly. Why did they end up with, some have 8, some have 10, some have 3, some have 2? Whereas millipedes, it's almost like every species has a different number of segments, which is effectively, to explain it, it's kind of like the thing out of which the legs pop. That you see these multiple parts of the body.
Each segment will have 4 legs in these cases. So,
and so it always blows my mind. I would love to know more. I guess it would be so interesting as an evolutionary biologist. What would be selecting for more or less segments?
Well, I suppose it's getting longer. If you want to, if there's an evolutionary advantage to being longer.
Yeah, well, if you're underground, you've got no predators.
Yeah, the only way to get longer in the case of these animals is to have more segments.
Yeah.
Or one long segment. And one long segment, you're not... what is more likely to happen in an evolutionary context? That you're going to replicate something you've already got 300 of? Or all of a sudden you're going to have a longer segment that has 8 legs instead of 4? It's almost impossible to work out how you're going to get more legs on a single segment.
Well, and I looked this up,
so just replicating segments.
Yeah, I remember learning about this in biology, but it's Hox genes, HOX genes are these type of... Well, I've got the explanation here. Hox genes are members of the homeotic transcription factor family that play a key role in controlling the body plan along the craniocaudal axis, so head-tail axis of an animal, and specify segment identity of tissues within the embryo. Mutations in Hox genes result in homeotic transformation of that tissue. That is, one part of that tissue develops into another part of that tissue.
Yeah, so you can basically replicate body parts, as in whole segments of body parts. So
well,
you don't
effectively,
just
all that
create
happens
a new
is
leg.
that gene duplicates, right? And then it codes for one more segment.
That's right.
So you would imagine that this millipede that has 330 body segments is going to have a corresponding number of genes, whether it's exactly one Hox gene for every single segment.
It would be interesting to know, and obviously it's way beyond this article, and I don't know how many individuals of that type that they are calling a species they found, but it would be interesting to know if there is variation in the number of segments within the species. So is 330 the number, or is it just something more than 300? Some have 320, some have 336. It'd be interesting to know that.
Well, and so I looked it up here too. There are certain species of snakes where they have vertebrae up to 300, right? And I guess this would be the equivalent in vertebrates. So things with backbones would be the number of bones in their backbone. And it seems like it's interesting. I think like giraffes, we think they have more bones in their neck, right? Than we do, but they don't. They just have larger bones in their neck, and they still have whatever it is.
Whales, giraffes, and humans have the same number of neck vertebrae.
Yeah, which is crazy when you think snakes. It varies a heap.
Yeah, there
can be some snake with, it says up to 300 or more vertebrae. Yeah. Whereas, I would imagine there are a whole heap that are very short.
That's a morphological equivalent of millipedes having more segments, because vertebrae are little just replications of the segment structure in the spinal cord of a vertebrate.
Yeah, I wonder if you could ever have a mutation.
Sorry, a black kite flying around outside the window.
Not an actual kite, but a bird.
A bird, yes.
some kid in the next yard.
Yeah, it's not some kid flying a kite that happens to be black.
Yeah, I guess the equivalent in humans would be like if someone had whatever the genes are when they're developing as an embryo for your hips and legs were to duplicate, and you ended up with like the human centipede. Yes. Which if you've seen that movie, where you've got three people attached to one another and they all have different limbs. But if that were to ever happen, it'd be sort of like that. But yeah, it is interesting. I wonder if things like millipedes and centipedes above ground that are more active would have fewer segments, because it would mean there's less of them to grab onto for predators.
I think, just from looking at this, it looks more like a worm than a millipede.
Yeah.
The legs are clearly tiny. And I suspect the legs are not so much used for locomotion as used to hang on. So they're really operating like a worm with legs, little things stuck out the side of them. So from just the look of it, you look and go, that could not possibly survive on the surface. Even regardless of it being grabbed by predators and things, it would just break. Yeah. It's it's like a piece of string. It's not it's not what we would typically see as a surface arthropod.
Why are animals underground usually so different? You want to talk about that a little bit? I find that really interesting. Like this millipede is white.
Yeah.
Which is, I would imagine, a very rare colour for any kind of insect on above ground. Maybe a moth or something, or a butterfly you'd see it's white.
And deep sea are the same things, in that they're extreme environments, in a sense that they're extremely controlled and consistent environments.
And they don't have light. So
there's no light. The temperature doesn't change. The moisture won't change unless there is a catastrophic event. So you get these sort of weird, and it's when we discover these animals that are, and even plants, fungi and so on, that are living this far underground, or animals that are living on, undersea vents, hot, vents that are, thousands of metres below the surface of the sea.
They're almost always white.
They're almost always white, or they're almost always, they're not new types of animals, which you would sort of think this is a completely unique environment. How come we're not discovering a completely new taxon, large taxon, a new class of animals? Like we've got insects, and we've got spiders, and now
effectively
we've got millipedes, and now we've got an alien. They're just variations on the theme, but they're these sort of bizarre variations because they are no longer subject to the same selection pressures that animals that are typically on the surface, that have far more variable environments that they have to cope with, and different pressures of predation and competition and so on. It's a bizarre sort of environment when you think about what's it like living in the soil 60 metres below the surface. It's going to be the same for 1 million years. It's not. So, and you don't need eyes. It's dark.
And that was
don't need to be able to move much,
right?
Because I suspect these are eating, microbial, small fungi and bacteria and stuff that are just going to be living in the soil around you. You're not going to have to go running around hunting.
Well, that's some of the interesting things. I'd need to look into this, but I have a feeling that caves and deep sea environments tend to be relatively, what would you say, lack kind of diversity quite a bit. They'll have few key species that kind of live there, but often, like around the vents, you'll see there are shitloads of mussels
and worms,
crabs and worms, and they kind of all have this symbiotic, or that that the food chain is pretty set up there, where the crabs kind of eat whatever they can get. I think there's one where you see them, and the worms coming out of the tubes put their red, I don't know what you would call them, like tendrils out to try and grab floating things by, and the crabs are constantly sitting at the top, kind of trying to grab one of the tendrils to eat, and so it is really interesting, but they're all white, except for the tendrils, which are red for whatever reason.
The thing is that producing pigment
costs money. Energy, money.
Yes, it costs energy, and it's not just energy in the sense of actually producing it, but energy to maintain metabolic pathways in order to keep producing it. So anything that if you can get an advantage in terms of the amount of energy that you're expending by stopping doing things, then like we have stopped doing video. We're now just doing audio podcasts. So then there's an advantage to that because you can spend your energy on something else. Or you don't need to go and collect as much energy. And that's the challenge in many cases, is just finding food. And if you can reduce your energy intake, your energy expenditure to account for the fact that you don't have as big an energy intake, then you're going to be okay. So.
Yeah, that was always one of those really interesting things to learn about with biology and evolution, and that there's that constant trade-off. Like if you think of an animal is going to get over its lifetime a certain amount of energy, say 100, it gets to put that energy into different things like sperm production, body size, tooth size, and it has to kind of weigh these, not personally, but like at an evolutionary scale, it has to work out, or evolution works out for it, which of these are most important. So, I think one of the memories that I have from the evolutionary class is like the rhinoceros beetles that have those massive horns on them that are effectively, they come up head to head on logs, and the goal is for them to throw one another off the log, to lift one another up using their pincers or their horns and defeat their adversary. But if in growing larger weaponry, horns and pincers, they take the energy from that bucket of energy that they get throughout their entire life from sperm production.
Yes.
And so there's this beautiful balance between how much energy the animal can spend on weaponry and how much it needs to hold on to produce sperm to be able to reproduce with the females. Because obviously if you spend all of your limited number of or units of energy on just weapons, you max that out, and you have nothing for sperm, you can't pass on those genes.
Exactly.
And so you get selected out.
If you had a whole bunch of sperm, but you don't get the
nothing to
opportunity to use them use it, then it's a waste of energy.
Yeah.
And that's as you know, I'm in a study as an evolutionary biologist as well. And that was I suppose the thing that I found most interesting studying biology was trying to work out and understand from an evolutionary perspective what the costs and benefits were for any organism's lifestyle, and how those lifestyles have evolved to account for all of those costs and benefits, because there's never one or the other. I mean, the one you gave was a good example of one that is a trade-off, but there are usually 50 of those, and each one of them is trading off against the others, and so just contemplating those things is a really interesting thing to sort of spend your life doing, I think. So.
Well, yeah, and arms races, right? Where once you have animals interacting with one another, different species, and like lions and antelopes, for example, the antelope has to get more fleet of foot, faster and faster and faster, but in doing so, it becomes more fragile and frail, right? And so it can slip up and break a leg pretty easily. The same reason that horses can break legs pretty easily. And lions, as a result, have to kind of get faster and faster and faster. And so they have that trade-off too of size versus speed. I think it's the same with like cheetahs, right? Cheetahs have to they're the fastest land animal, but as a result, they're incredibly frail.
Yeah,
and
if they got any faster, they would break their legs.
Yeah. And they can't fight. Like if they were to catch something, a lot of the time their food's stolen from other animals.
Because they can't defend it.
Exactly. Yeah. And those other animals can afford to sort of give up needing to be able to chase animals down. So things like hyenas or lions, although lions do quite a lot, because they are able to also steal from other animals that are better at capturing.
Bigger and stronger.
So it is amazing to see that evolution isn't this active force, or natural selection isn't this active force that determines anything, but this kind of natural process of settling on these kind of traits.
It's a whole
that
lot
takes
of
place
it's a multi-dimensional
numbers.
equilibria of forces that are operating. Speaking of which, completely random. I don't know whether you saw. I haven't found a print article for it yet. Did you see the news last night? There was a 2-minute or 30-second grab on the news of a lioness who was shielding and helping a baby wildebeest get back to its mother.
I assume that would have been because the lioness had just given birth.
Don't know. Presumably, yeah. I expect it was this maternal instinct thing, but it was just bizarre watching this. And the wildebeest was clearly less than a day old as well. It was wobbly on its legs and things. This tiny little thing walking, almost touching the haunches of this lion. And apparently the lioness effectively, I don't know, it took it back, but protected it until it got back to its herd.
Yeah, I found it on here. So let's see. Astonishing footage has emerged of a lioness appearing to lead a lone wildebeest calf back to its herd in what a wildlife official has described as an act of love. The Tanzania National Park's official Twitter account posted the video Monday in which a lioness is seen walking side by side with a plucky wildebeest calf half her size as she escorted the baby animal back to the safety in the Serengeti National Park. Such behavior is highly unusual and has led Pascal Shalutete, the spokesman for the Tanzania National Parks Authority, to tell the BBC the lioness's maternal instincts must have overcome her natural predatory instincts. Yeah, that's why I said I think she would have been, having just given birth.
Yes, but it's astonishing footage.
It's pretty weird, isn't it?
Look at it and go, what?
I've seen a few of those, though, especially with lionesses for some reason. I don't know, maybe jaguars too, where they, for whatever reason, they've just given birth and they must have this huge amount of hormones going through their systems that are
oxytocin kicks
don't
in
be violent, take care of your babies kind of hormones. And they're not killing.
Baby wildebeest fits in the same pattern as baby lion.
Yeah.
So, as your mother, when we were watching this on TV last night, as she turned around and said at the end of it, so she said, so that lioness, when she dropped it off back at the herd and said, I'll be back for you when you've grown up.
Yeah. You better not become the sickest one in your herd, or you'll be taken out. It is pretty weird how those sort of aberrations occur.
Yeah.
Like, I always wonder how things end up mutually working together. You know, like a good example of that evolutionarily would be the mantis shrimp and is it a guppy or something? The fish. They both live in the same hole, right? And so the mantis shrimp is effectively the protection, the muscles, and the fish is the thing that digs the hole out and moves the rocks out. And so the mantis shrimp's just sitting there with its pincers. It's the thing that can, like...
It's the defender. Yeah.
They're these weird shrimp that have this weird claw that has the ability to break the sound barrier, I think, when they click it, or create a sonic boom, effectively, right? So they're creating this explosion that I think within that explosion that they create when they click their pincer, they do it at such a speed and with such power, even though they're tiny, that it creates this explosion of gas. And apparently that's hotter than the surface of the sun for a millisecond, right, when that happens. But you're like, how does that evolve? Is it a one-time thing where one mantis shrimp, for whatever reason, paired up with a guppy and they ended up both reproducing and passing on those genes? Or is it the kind of thing where the two species are sort of at an interface, interacting,
just hanging around,
and it just repeatedly happens until it becomes the norm? Because, those sorts of mutualism, where they're two different species working together to benefit one another as well as themselves, that always just blows my mind how that happens, right?
It is interesting.
Anyway, we should probably finish up there.
We should. And
chat
here
next
end
time,
of the
guys.
biology lesson.
See ya.
Bye.